Comics Coast to Coast is brought to you by patrons like you. If you'd like to help the show out, head on over to patreon.com/comicsc2c and show us a little bit of your love. Your sweet, sweet love. I mean, like $1 worth of love. And we'll take that love and hug it and squeeze it and make it do podcast things that you'll enjoy. So come on, see what happens.
This is Comics Coast to Coast.
Hey everybody, this is Brian Dunaway, and you're listening to Comics Coast to Coast, episode 314, the Cam Kendell interview part 2. Can't wait to talk to Cam. Before we talk to Cam, I want to bring back my special co-host, Joel Duggan of Forge Publishing. Joel.
Hello, sir. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. The weather is taking a turn. It's getting cool. And I couldn't be happier because it's October, and that is the right time to get cool.
It's one of those times of year that's really pretty outside and really productive. I find that I really like just opening up a window with a lot of fresh air and getting a lot of work done.
Right. I agree absolutely. Matthew Descharme of Matt the Wad is here with us as well. Matt.
Hey there. And this is my wife's birthday, so happy birthday. Even though she doesn't listen to the show, as far as I know.
But happy birthday!
You know what we're doing for her birthday? I'm ignoring her and recording the show.
Man, you are just flat out evil. Yeah, I like it.
Everybody that does listen, everybody message Matt's wife and be like, "We're sorry.
We're so sorry." What's her Twitter account?
Okay.
Don't tell me.
Her out tomorrow night.
Aw, it is. That's true. It's a Thursday night. Friday nights for taking out and going and doing stuff. My fiance, Audra, had a birthday this week. As a matter of fact, yesterday was her birthday, and we're doing big things this weekend. So very excited about that.
I thought you were going to say tonight, but then...
We were going to do something tonight, but then we decided instead I'm letting her sit here and watch me record the podcast. How's it going, baby? No, I'm just kidding. I wouldn't do that to her. And she wouldn't do it on top of that. So... enough of our relationships here on Comics Coast to Coast. Let's get on to the interview with Cam Kendell. Cam, welcome back to the show.
Hey.
How are you, my friend?
I'm good.
I hear that we're doing great. I hear that you're still in the Utahs.
Oh, always. Yeah.
Is that a great? Yeah, that's a great place to be. We were talking pre-show about all the great artists who live in Utah. We have our very own Frog Pants Studio King Master Scott Johnson, who's a Utahian, and we said Jake is a Utah, right?
Indeed.
Jake Parker, right?
Yep.
And who else do we have?
Will Terry, Adrian Ropp. Trying to think about anybody else I know in Utah that I'm probably forgetting.
Do you know Matthew Armstrong?
Oh,
not familiar with Matthew.
Oh, he's the bee's knees.
Okay.
Oh, he is. Oh, that's it. He's the bee's knees because that's great because that's Utah's thing, isn't it? The bee thing.
It is, yeah. He's just the knees, though. Like, you know.
You tied it all in.
No, I'm just joking.
Or either that, or you're part of the hive. I don't know. It's always questionable. Hey, look, it's Cam Kendell, and you can check out his website at CamKendell.com. Where else can people check out your work before we get started with this second part of our interview?
Oh, I'm everywhere. I'm all over the social meds.
Mm-hmm.
You know, at Cam Kendell, pretty much anywhere. Instagram, Tumblr, Twitter.
Tumblr,
blah, blah,
Twitters.
blah, blah, blah.
Ad nauseum.
Yeah.
But hey, that's not all that you're at now. You've expanded to the social media of funding. You've recently started doing Patreon, right?
Indeed, yes.
Ooh, can you tell us a little bit about your Patreon gig and what we can do?
This is actually my my second go around. Wah, wah.
Wah, wah, wah.
I have no idea when I started it the first time.
Right.
Years ago, and then I got too caught up with client work, and I wasn't doing anything on it, so I just pretty much closed it down.
Right, right. We've been there, Cam.
Yeah. So that, I think, beginning of September.
Right.
Yeah, that sounds right. Yeah, September. I relaunched it, re-geared it. Before it was just focused on one particular comic that I was creating, and now it's more helping me create all the comics I want to make, and YouTube videos as well.
Which is, to me, is more in the spirit of how you function, right?
Right.
Like
Yeah.
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 Support the creator. That's what Patreon's about. Not Kickstarter is more like support the project, right? Whereas Patreon's kind of like support the creator of sorts.
I kind of see it as like Kickstarter is for one thing that you're one and done. Right. Whereas Patreon is like, this is the thing I'm going to make part of my life now. Do you want in?
Right.
Yeah.
Also, go ahead, Joel.
Well, and I also think that a lot of times you'll notice that a physical product will be associated with a Kickstarter, whereas a person and the things that they create will be related to a Patreon. But usually the rewards for Patreon, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Kendall, tend to err on the side of behind the scenes, digital distribution, MP3s for musicians, things that are a little bit easier on an independent to then distribute and control and do that kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely. I'd agree with that.
I like that.
So,
go ahead.
Well, I'd say one of the things that I really like about Patreon is that it puts, like the face of the artist kind of front and center. And I have to go out there and say right now that I loved your Kickstarter video, Cam. I follow you on Instagram, and we've been, friends online for a while, and just following your art and your little, all the different things you do on social media. And it's so endearing, but honest. And it's like, if anybody doesn't know you, it's you in 2.5 minutes. and if people do know you from following you on social media and come to the Patreon, it's just like, oh yeah, no, this is what I should expect. It's just no surprises here. And I wanted to know what kind of pushed you to make the video the way that you did. Obviously those kind of edits and that kind of pace kind of there's some decision making behind that. So how did that kind of happen?
Bill Nye, probably watching Bill Nye growing up. I think a lot of that, his comedic sense rubbed off on me. So I like awkward pauses and
Zucchini.
Yeah, just random bits of whatever nonsense. But the Zucchini, I had shot, I don't know, 50 takes. I was like, this stinks. I can't get anything that I enjoy. And so I took a break and I walked outside and I found this ridiculously huge zucchini in my garden. Right. So I thought, okay, I'll just start the video that way, I guess.
I'm going to elevate this thing to a level of art.
Exactly.
So I'm going to bring some nature in here. I got to tell you also, I'm looking at the video. What did you capture this with? Because it almost looks like a 4K camera, or did you just have really good lighting?
Oh, it is just my iPhone.
Oh, well, it looks fantastic. Which iPhone is it? Is it the latest, the greatest?
No, it's a 7.
Oh, well, it's pretty close.
Still, it's a really good camera in a 7, though.
Yeah, I mean, I think it gets good video. The lighting was good, though. I have 2 really big windows that I face in my studio, so lighting was pretty good.
That's always super important when you're working with a phone camera. I mean, lighting is essential to getting something to look really good, and it looks really fantastic.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I also love your different angles you took. I mean, wow, how did you put this camera in so many different places in your studio? Did you glue it places, or what did you do?
So I just took a bunch of takes facing one way, and then I moved the camera over and looked at the other angle. Yeah.
So you're a real David Fincher then. You're the best. I like it. I like it. I hope if I ever make a Patreon video, and I will, that it is even half as interesting and entertaining as that. So if you haven't seen it, do head on over to patreon.com. If nothing else, at least see the video and have yourself a good laugh and a look at a really huge zucchini. That's really larger than you're supposed to let them get, by the way. You know that, right?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I tried to eat those, and they were disgusting.
I think once they get over like a foot, I think you need to pick it or put the brakes on or something.
Well, that's the hook, right? I mean, you've got 15 seconds online to grab someone's attention to see if they're going to watch the next 45 seconds of your video. And when in the first 15 seconds, all you can think of is I need to know why he's holding this giant zucchini. Like, there's no question that I need to answer right now. More than why is Cam holding this giant zucchini?
I'm so glad it works that way. I don't think of it that way,
Yeah,
Like,
you just think
my videos are just okay. I'll just say whatever comes to my mind.
So true. Okay, so you also have a Kickstarter coming up, and I won't talk about that in a minute. You kind of teased it, and you've been teasing it through Inktober, which I also want to talk about coming soon. But are you still taking commissions right now? And how does that affect your Patreon and how you handle your promises?
I am still taking commissions. So I recently switched my shop over to be located on my actual web page.
Right.
Web page, website. That's what I say. So camkendell.com/shop will take you to my new store, and that has a little area where you can just get a commission right there.
Yeah.
It doesn't really conflict much with fulfilling Patreon, I guess. I mean, there is one of the rewards of being a patron is a commission. Right. That's like a one-time thing for people who pledge a certain amount. So, you can go either way, really.
Right. What if I ordered like 8 He-Mans right now? What would happen?
The He-Mans would rejoice and show up at your doorstep.
Would he do the thing, or would you do the thing? I have the power. Would you do that? No.
Would I?
Yeah. Would you stand up right there? I mean, I can be bought. I just wasn't sure if you could be bought. But,
Nice.
No, I'd probably do that classic laugh that he does,
Right. Where
he like leans backwards and looks up a little bit.
Nice.
I'd do
That's
that.
my natural laugh. What are you talking?
Oh yeah.
I'm curious because I separate this kind of terminology. When you in your Patreon video, you're talking about working more on your personal work as opposed to client work. Do you consider commissions client work, or is client work like big company, larger contracts?
So client is bigger companies.
Right.
Right. That's the same way that I separate it. Like when someone says, "Hey, I want a drawing of Deadpool," I consider that more just paid personal work. It's not something I would call, they're technically a client, but I would treat them as such. But when I think about client work, I think about large projects that kind of dominate your studio time.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I like that too. Also, while I'm looking at your shop, I'm noticing that you got a great link from Zelda illustration on there already. And I noticed in the pictures, you do this a lot on your Instagram, and I'd like to hear more about it. But on Instagram, you do a lot of real-world work as well as some digital stuff, or at least it's part of your process from my understanding what we talked about last time. I noticed that you got some Copic brushes or markers that I'm always afraid to get. You were very brave with some of these pinks and almost cyan, really light colors. I'm always afraid of those colors. Do those work well for you?
Yeah, I think they do. You know what inspired me to pick up some of those? I was looking at, who is it? Eric Talbot.
Right.
Do you know him?
Yes.
Great.
Let me pull him up.
Fantastic artist. And I noticed he uses kind of, I don't know, some odd colors that I wouldn't normally think to use.
Right.
And that kind of inspired me to pick up some of those colors.
Those things ain't cheap, so
no.
Yeah. How do you make
those
that?
are the only ones I have. Just the odd colors.
Why did you choose these colors? Because that's what they had, Brian. That's all they had.
That's just how I go. I don't know.
Right. I don't know. Did you pick those up at Hobby Lobby? Because our Hobby Lobby has decided that it'd be a good idea to hide all that stuff. They put it behind. If you want it, you got to come see somebody. I'm not down with that.
Yeah, it's all locked behind a little plastic case.
I don't like that.
Yeah, ditto. Same thing happening here.
No, they treat you that way too. Well, good. It's not just here in South Carolina; it's also in Utah. Well, good. I was taking it personal, so that's good.
Well, it is personal, but
right.
It also spread here to Utah.
And it seems like every time I walk down the Hobby Lobby aisle. By the way, the only art supply store in our town is either Hobby Lobby or Michael's, and our Michael's, sometimes they have what you need, most time not. So I have to go to the Hobby Lobby. It's my only options. And when I get down the ink aisle, and the marker aisle is always right next to the restroom. And so I'm constantly being harassed by employees every time I even walk over there. If I walk over there, I guarantee an employee is going to be like 2 feet behind me. It's like, what do you need? And I'm like,
Whoa.
I need some space. I need some. What'd you hear?
That's creepy. Yeah.
Right. But that's just my Hobby Lobby experience. I'm not saying it's a bad place. I'm just saying my experiences down the brush pen aisle. And I'd be interested if you're out there and you have a Hobby Lobby and that's where you have to go get your art supplies. Shoot me an email at guys@comicscoasttocoast.com and tell me about your experiences in your town with your local art stores. Utah, do they have? Are you kind of in a small town that's got nothing but Hobby Lobbies, or is there like a more boutique style art shop around?
Oh, you know what? So the city I'm in, there's actually 2 big universities here.
Oh, nice.
And both of them have a pretty good art program. So we have a couple little privately run art shops that I enjoy going to every now and then.
Right.
But I'm not beneath going to Hobby Lobby when I need something cheap.
Right. Maybe I'm painting Hobby Lobby as the bad guy here. I'm not. I'm just saying when your only options are Hobby Lobby or Michael's, then you kind of get, you get better. Because you realize there used to be other art stores in town and they're gone. And you can only assume it's because, the big stores. But,
because they've been Hobby Lobbied, right?
They've been Hobby Lobbied. And you know what I used to do when I was going to school? I would complain about those little private boutique places because they charge too much. So I guess it's probably my own fault. I did it to myself.
Yeah.
To myself. Joel?
I'm curious, actually.
I'm a downer. Go ahead.
Do the universities have any on-site stores?
They do, yeah, both of them.
Yeah, because we've got one here too.
Yeah, I picked up stuff there as well.
Yeah, I mean, I find it's probably more geared towards like traditional media, like paints and things like that. Like, you can get some cool paper, but not really with like technical pens and normal cartooning stuff. But we have a chain here called Dessert. It's a French Canadian store, and I find it
French.
Grossly better than Michael's. Like, Michael's is just overpriced, and Michael's got a lot of craft stuff, whereas Dessert will have some things. Like, I mean, they're a retail store. They've got to have some craft toys and they've got to have some craft stuff, but really a lot of Dessert is like art, like illustration, commercial illustration, stuff that even architects might get. Like, it's more of an art supply store would be, I say, the first role of it. So I guess I luck out there. But I noticed. Go for it, Matt.
Here, they have like the New England Art College, whatever. It's part of the nationwide art institutes, and they have a store there. But they definitely use the same logic for pricing that most college textbook stores use.
Right.
Like, oh, let me look at this pencil. Oh, it's only like $35.
Yeah.
That's the truth. I hate that. I remember when I was in college and I realized that I had purchased like, I don't know, at least 3 or 4 sets of colored pencils, and they all just sucked because I was refusing to pay Prismacolor prices at our local boutiques, which was like, a 48-piece Prismacolor set was like close to $100. And I just wouldn't do it. But finally I said, you know what? Got to be for real. And so I bought them. And I loved them. I've never went back. I can't use those other things. What Crayola makes one even? I haven't tried those. Those are just too hard.
Yeah, Crayola's got some. I can't remember the brand name. Laurentian, I think, is the brand name in Canada. That seems to be the one that all the kids had when I was growing up. And those are still okay. But they're the hard colored pencils. So speaking of colored pencils, actually, I noticed in some of the videos that I've been watching, Cam, that you use a mechanical pencil when you're doing a lot of your sketching, but it's a colored mechanical pencil. So I'm curious, do you have like a favorite brand of mechanical pencil? Because we talk to people all the time about pens, but I'm curious about your mechanical pencil, like favoritism, I want to say, and your favorite lead, because I know that I have a specific color lead that I like too.
And where do you get it? I'll add that on to that. I've never even heard of colored mechanical pencil lead.
Right.
Yeah, I fell in love with that in college. I picked up a mechanical pencil and some red lead there. I think it was Pentel that made it. But then after I stopped shopping at the university bookstore, I had a hard time finding that stuff. So I switched to something else. I'm honestly not that picky about what I use, but right now I'm using, it's a Faber-Castell lead holder.
Right.
So it's the bigger kind of mechanical pencil that an architect would use or whatever.
Yeah.
Holds that, I don't know how big this, what is this, 0.2 millimeter?
5. Is it a 5 in those things? In the No, you might be right. I think he does think 2 something.
I have no idea. Probably what I just said is way off. That's
right. I know what you're talking about, though. A draft pencil, which is kind of like architects usually use, and that's where I usually have success getting those things, too. By the way, those things aren't cheap either.
Yeah, no. Oh, okay, it is. It's a 2 millimeter lead. I just found it.
That's it.
And the lead I got, the lead I bought off of JetPens.
Mm-hmm.
.quam. And it's, I have no idea how to say the name. Stedler? Is that how you say that name?
Stedler, yep.
Stedler, yep.
Yeah, that's a pretty well-known pencil band, yeah.
Lumichrome Red. That's the lead I use. The holder I just picked up at a local art store. Right. I'm not really too picky about it. I would have picked anything else.
I usually pick I have a purple that I always get. I like it. It's a nice little purplish color. But I like the red too. I want to try that red you have.
Yeah, I like the warm.
Yeah, the warm is good. I've noticed most of the time I've noticed that I've seen a lot of animators use that red more recently.
Yeah, and that's where my habit comes from. Currently I'm using color erase pencils, which a lot of traditional animators will tell you is something that they've been using for years. And I use a carmine red. And they're easy to get because there's still a lot of animators in the city, and they're 69 cents a piece. Like, it's not terrible, but they are traditional pencils that you have to sharpen. And if you're like me and you sketch like a gorilla, you are sharpening these things constantly. And it's fine at home because I have an electric pencil sharpener. But I've been noticing when I'm out, sketchbooking or, at a convention, wondering if a mechanical pencil might be the right solution to not have to worry about sharpening my pencil every 2 minutes.
Yeah. With the 2 millimeter lead, you still have to sharpen those. If you want that sharp point, do you sharpen your 2 millimeter, Cam?
I'm lazy. I'm sitting over here feeling all guilty. I just wait till my sketches get really thick and heavy.
Right.
And then at some point I've worked a nice point, like a lopsided point on my lead,
Yeah.
Then I get back to the fine lines.
Yeah,
I like it.
My Cintiq tip looks like that. It's got an angled wedge on it because of all the friction. Yeah, that's what I mean. I'm telling you, I sketched like a gorilla. It's not.
You must.
That's a fun image, right?
Yeah. I have not went through a Cintiq nib yet, and I have they come in they
come with replacements,
12 or something like that, and I have not went through one yet. And I feel like I draw a pretty good bit most days. I just don't know. Maybe I'm not bearing down hard enough like you do. Does the screen warp when you're bearing down on it, Joel? Is that what we're talking about here?
Creaks under the pressure.
No, it doesn't creak under the pressure, but there is a noticeable. I don't want to say divot or speed bump because that's an over-exaggeration. But if you run your pencil over the stylus over the screen, there's a ditch, which is probably going to. If you analyzed it, if the forensics team showed up, they would say, "Oh, well, that's the arc of his wrist when he's doing curves." Like that's exactly what that is. That this guy draws a lot of circles. That's.
We're going
to auction that off. Would you say you're in an artistic rut?
About lost my coffee.
Wow. And yes.
and answer your question, yes I am.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious, and thank you, because that leads me right into asking you about the hiatus. Where you had to relaunch your Patreon. There was a gap where you weren't able to produce enough to keep the original Patreon going. How much of that was client work? And I'm just curious if you're willing to share how much of that was maybe, an artistic right of your own.
Most of it, it began with client work. Definitely. Well, actually, it began with client work and getting distracted with other projects. So I took a break from the webcomic I was doing to launch a Kickstarter to print an art book.
Right.
And so I was like, well, I'll just take a month off to do that, so I can just focus on this Kickstarter. Then when that was over, I decided I needed to do a little mini comic to have something to sell when I go to Comic-Con other than prints. So I did this little Flopnar, the Bunbarian comic. And so things just started, going on. And then client work started to pick up more. And and at that point, I felt like I had advanced artistically a lot. So I was kind of in this place where I looked back at the older pages of my webcomic and I just felt like, oh, dang, those are ugly. So
Classic.
I was in kind of a difficult place. So I spent a couple of years where I was actually working on the story and where I wanted to go from there. And I'd gotten to a point where I felt like I really knew where I wanted to go with the story. And I was just going to live with the ugly pages, just be okay with it. And then I talked with some other artists and had a revelation of just redoing the whole thing. Not like going back and redoing those pages.
Right.
But starting the webcomic over with a new sense of story and character. I feel like I've really progressed in my character designs and my artistic ability as well as my storytelling ability.
Right.
So I wanted to start a story with, this fresh new perspective.
Agreed. I think, I think that would, if you feel that disconnected from the original, all you're going to do otherwise is be tempted to go back and redraw everything and try to fit it in. That's not going to benefit you.
Yeah, I think another big thing was that the original premise of the webcomic, so it's Percival Pendragon, and it was all based on video game references. Like that was the whole premise because it was really just an experiment. I thought, I want to get into comics. The best way to get into it is to start making a comic, so I'll just do a webcomic. What do I like? Well, I like classic Nintendo video games. I like monsters and crazy weird creatures and semi-cute drawings, so I'll just mash all that together and make something. But then it had some, visually it was too similar, I felt like, to the classic Nintendo games. So what I'm doing now is redesigning a lot of those characters. I still love the character ideas and the background and the world. So I'm retaining a lot of that, but I'm redesigning the characters to be still references to video games, but not visually so close, if that makes sense. So like there was a mushroom character, for example, who was like this sensei, and he looked like a mushroom character from Mario, and now he's a cat. So,
right.
But the mushroom characters are so cute.
They're adorable.
They're all adorable. I hate it. It makes me want to just hug them. That and your unicorns. I love both of them. Love them so freaking much. It's ridiculous. And I also, so you mentioned your last Kickstarter was that art book? Was the last Kickstarter you did?
Yeah, that went down in flames.
Oh no, did it really?
Tale. Yeah, that Kickstarter didn't fund. So that was one of the drive also. That's what pushed me to make that little mini comic, because my goal was to have this book to sell at Comic-Con. And once that didn't fund, then I, decided to figure something else out.
Well, that bums me out because I love it. But you still have it for sale in your shop, so that's good, right?
Yeah, I put it together as a PDF because I was already doing that for the Kickstarter anyway, and it's up there as a digital download.
Right. If somebody wanted the print because they suddenly said, "Hey, you know what? I like print," what would they do then? Just be out of luck?
Yeah, probably.
Buy it, print it out themselves.
I guess they could.
Don't tell anybody.
Download is like a high res. That's fine if people want to do that. Yeah, I wouldn't care.
God, I love it though because you got such great. You've left the sketch lines in this, so it is a lot of color pencil looking things, and I'm assuming some washes possibly. And I like the way it looks. I love it just the way it is.
I think down the road I might do another art book that I'll try and print. But what I learned from that experience was that that was when I was really starting out, and my following was a lot smaller than it is now.
Right.
People aren't as interested in a book of just art from an artist that they only kind of know.
Yeah.
I feel like if you're going to go on Kickstarter and launch a comic or something like that, that's something that can appeal to people that don't even know you as an artist, just because they like comics and stories,
And they can get invested in a trailer essentially. For the comic, you can tease the story, tease the first act, and then say, hey, you can even prep people if it's going to be more than one one book. You can say, hey, it's going to be 3 books. This is the first one. Like, it's a deep story, and we've got all this figured out, and you can kind of prep people mentally for what they're investing in. Whereas I think, as someone that has a little bit of an investment in art books, it was a lot more difficult to try and bring people into something that doesn't have a narrative.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Other than your visual language, which is great.
Yeah.
But,
I shouldn't. And I shouldn't say it doesn't have a narrative. It doesn't have a narrative yet, and that's the thing, is that, like the art books that I make, there ends up being a narrative, but that's something that myself and Rob, or myself and Piper, figure out over the course of making the book. Not that we have it all figured out now, Whereas a story, like an actual comic pitch, like ultimately you start with an outline, so you right away you have something that you can pitch with people. Do you find that you're drawn more to doing comic work and you're more interested in publishing comics than you are, art collections and sketchbooks and things like that?
Yeah, I think I am. I just love telling stories. I love making people laugh or smile, and I find it easier to do with a story.
Right. True story. Haha. I didn't mean to say it, but I said anyway. Hey, you know what? While we're talking about finding a story for the characters that you're creating, you've chosen to, and well played, sir. You have chosen to make Inktober a time to work on Mortimer B. Radley, right?
Indeed.
Smart man. So how is that going? How is Inktober going for you?
Oh, it's great. Let's see, I'm 22 pages into it. So, though to be fair, I did 9 of those pages last year.
I'm going to let you pass because it's new to me.
I think, wow, I'm finding there's this pattern. I started this last Inktober, did 9 pages, and there was too much client work, and I just like, whatever, I can't finish this. This is like the story of my artistic life.
Or the artistic roller coaster.
Yeah, but 2017 is the year of finishing all past projects.
Yes. Clients know when you're busy. They know it. It's like, oh, it's like the thing where if you're single, no ladies want you or no men want you or whatever. But yeah, when you're single, nobody wants you. But then when you're married, it's like, oh, how you doing? So yeah, you're engaged to Mortimer B. Radley, and all of a sudden everybody shows up and goes, hey, do something for me.
Right.
Dance.
Yeah.
I like it. So that's great. Oh, by the way, I want to talk about, you feel free to talk about this or not talk about this. Just recently, your character, well, let's first of all talk about your character here, Mortimer B. Radley. I'm assuming that's supposed to be a play on Boo Radley from that there well-known book, To Kill a Mockingbird. Is that a fair guess?
It is, yeah.
Excellent. And the character in the book, he's in the movie as well. He's kind of an enigma, right? We can't figure out if he's bad or not. Isn't that kind of the whole rub? I think it is.
Yeah.
Right. So I haven't read in a long time. But To Kill a Mockingbird, just recently in the last month, I seen that there was a big hubbub because some of the libraries are using these pull lists. And they're usually pulled because, it may be inappropriate for the age group that they primarily serve, usually kids and stuff. But it's made it to a pull list. So do you think that, Boo Radley, do you think you'll have to address that in your Inktober? Or is that totally unrelated to you?
I had no plans. But you know what? Now that you brought it up, I might find some way to sneak it in the back of a pen or something.
Like a little something.
Have someone pulling it off a shelf, just
exactly.
Don't draw any attention to it. Just gonna make sure that the title of it or the author's name and initial is clearly on the spine of the book.
Pitch it into a trash can on fire.
That's really interesting. I mean, for me, that was required reading in school. That was middle school, grades 7, 8, 9. I want to say.
Yeah.
Ages 13 through 14. That's about when I think I read it.
I think we read it in high school here in the south of America.
Right.
I think it was early on, like freshman. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, it might have been high school up here. See, high school up here is later. You're usually 15 when you start high school.
Right. Yeah, we usually start. What? Right? What?
Yeah.
Insane.
Yeah, high school is 10, 11, 12. Grades 10, 11.
You Canadians.
Right?
That's
weird.
That's okay. We can't decide here in the U.S. either.
We actually have our school here is like that. The one I went to wasn't, but
right. Yeah. It's changed over time. But you know what? I'm so always conflicted because I want to get immediately outraged anytime anyone ever says, suppress a book or whatever. It's like, what? Don't be suppressing a book. And it's like, there's so many people in this world, and you just have to pick your battles. And this may be the battle to pick, but I don't know, man. I don't know.
I think too that by suppressing a book or removing a book from a reading list, I mean, you're removing a part of history. It was written. It's a product of its time. Stuff like this always reminds me of the Looney Tunes DVDs when they were released in these big box sets. Mm-hmm. And at the beginning of several of the sets, Whoopi Goldberg appears and gives like a PSA about like, hey, so these were made in the 30s, and they're going to reflect some of the viewpoints that were prevalent in the 30s. Oh, yeah. We could have censored them, but they're a product of their time and an important thing to remember. So they're a part of our history, and it's important to know that we move forward. And I think that that's the kind of attitude that I would have about this book being pulled too.
I like that idea. Maybe we should put like a book cover or something on it. Warning, there may be some language that we consider very offensive now that we kind of toss around back then.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's what a teacher is for. That's kind of their job.
Well, I'm not too worried about it. I see this as the typical U.S. thing of like 2 steps forward, 1 step back. That's just kind of how we do things here. Things advance pretty quickly, so everyone freaks out and feels like they have to like pull back a little bit, and it's just part of the dance that we do here in the U.S.
And then it'll slowly be put back on the shelves eventually, we hope, right?
Not to mention the fact that as soon as you ban something, that means everyone's going to check it out.
True story.
Yeah.
Could be reverse psychology. Like they realize, crap, not enough people have actually read this book. I know, ban it.
Right. Well, didn't they just release her like second book or something?
Yeah, something. I was trying to remember that too. I had read something about that as well. As a related article. Yes, but that's just, I guess that's where we live now. So as creators, as content creators, we saw just recently as well. We saw Dr. Seuss having to take down the museum of Dr. Seuss. I think it wasn't the museum of Dr. Seuss that had to pull down an offensive Asian stereotype that he had done early in his career that they had featured prominently on a wall somewhere, and they had to take it down. So as artists, should we be censoring ourselves in any form? I'm asking the question. I'm not proposing that we should. I'm just asking, what's your feelings? Are you angry as soon as I say censor ourselves from any type of, especially when it comes to humor, and being very careful? What do you guys think? You kind of...
Well, see, I think it would be a product of its time. So if these days people are a little bit more sensitive to those things, then you as an artist are more likely more sensitive. So hopefully your work would reflect that. That would be my, whereas back then it was basically ignorance. The Fleischer cartoons with Superman, he's often beating the crap out of Japanese guys in the Second World War.
Right.
But it's just, and there's the same thing. It's not a person, but there's a visual, not an FBI warning, but the same kind of like text on the screen saying, hey, this was made in the 50s. So we weren't really friendly with communist nations in the 50s.
All of Joel's content has like something before it. It says,
I'm an old soul.
Right. Let me frame this for you. Is what it says. Let me tell you what's supposed to be going on here.
Yeah. Sorry, Cam, you were going to say.
Well, I was just going to say, for myself, I'm an all ages type of artist. I very specifically focus on that, and that's very much just a personal choice of what I prefer in my life. That's the type of content I want to be consuming.
Right.
But people should be free to produce what they're going to produce, but people should also be free to decide what's in their life.
Right.
So if some building owned by somebody decides they don't want a certain piece of art or whatever,
right.
They can do that.
Right. I think we get touchy about that kind of stuff. But it's like part of our childhood. It's like, too bad.
Yes.
Your childhood was terrible.
Yeah.
I mean, I watched He-Man. Joel, your childhood was terrible. What are you trying to do to me, you jerk? How about you, Matt? You didn't chime in yet. How you feel about censoring yourself? Are you like balls out with Matt the Wad? What do you?
Well, I haven't done that one yet.
Right.
No, but I think it's fine if an artist wants to censor his own work. That's fine, cool, whatever. It gets a little bit more touchy when other people want to censor other people's work.
Mm-hmm.
That's when I start to feel like it's a slippery slope.
Yeah. The old slippery slope argument. That's right.
Argument.
Slippery slope argument. So I didn't mean to bring everybody into a serious conversation because we're here to entertain and talk to Cam, Kendell, and I'm sure we could go on and quite in depth. I'm sure we could dig our own graves if we talk long enough.
Well, To Kill a Mockingbird isn't the only literary reference that Cam's made in Mortimer B. Radley, though. Like I've seen Baba Yaga stuff. I've seen all kinds of different references. Like, do you have a list of things that you're trying to include in the comic?
No, it's just I just pull from what's in my brain.
Mm.
And as a younger kid, I really enjoyed folk tales a lot. Yes. So I had read about Baba Yaga, and so that just popped in my mind. I like puns. Yes. So if I'm going to create a witch, I try and think of a name that will be somewhat punny.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when it's that intelligent reference, it's the things that adults will get when they read this kind of stuff with their kids. Like it's got that deeper meaning, and probably I'm assuming more satisfying for you to kind of like come up with something clever as opposed to just calling the witch, Hazel or something, right?
Right, exactly. Hazel is like the name that comes to your mind when you think of the witch, right? Probably
because Warner Brothers did it.
Years
ago.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So my favorite was the slime cube character that I did.
Yes.
A gelatinous cube. And so his name is Gerald Latinus McCube.
That's the kind of stuff I really enjoy about your comics. Just like how imaginative the naming and the characters are. Like there's a gelatinous cube, there's a talking pumpkin that seems like a butler. Like there's all these questions that I have about reading Mortimer B. Radley. Also a mouthful to say, by the way. All parents will just love you reading this to their kids as they're just like, oh God, I have to say this all out loud. Are you kidding? But I'm curious, with the goal of putting this all together in a book and finishing the story, are you going to put more content in the book than you are revealing on Instagram during Inktober?
Yeah, definitely. So right now what's planned is to launch a Kickstarter November. My goal right now is November 1st. You heard it here.
Right. Holding you to it.
And the plan is a 68-page book. So the story is only going to be about 33 pages. So all that extra content is going to be additional spot illustrations that'll be contained inside the actual story.
Right.
To add a little more environment and richness to the story, and then as well as some full color renditions of characters in the back and maybe sketches, things like that.
Well, I'm really digging it. So I'm excited already for November. Get out of here, October. It's time for November so I can order this book already, Dad. All right, maybe I'm not that excited because I do love me some October. I love me some October, man, because like you say, you probably big into folk tales and fairy tales and that type of thing. I am too, and October kicks off that time when you stay inside and read books and get to know all these great characters and all these fantasy type things. I'm very much into fantasy during October and November. And even in December when I think about what I'm getting for Christmas, such a fantasy. Because you're not getting it, Brian. You're just living a fantasy. Nothing for you. But,
October's the bee's knees.
It is. It's the bee's knees,
baby.
It
just replaced Matthew Armstrong as the bee's knees. Sorry, Matthew.
Anyway. Hey, there's two knees on a bee, right? So maybe there's one each.
Oh, there's multiple, right? There's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 knees.
Yeah, that's a lot of. Maybe that's why they call it the bee's knees, because there's so many of them.
There's so many.
Plus, it rhymes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that may do.
October's good though. I'm right there with you. I was born on Halloween.
Ooh.
So all growing up, Halloween was huge for me.
Right.
And the idea of I loved the classic Halloween monsters. Those really speak to me.
Yes. They do too. So you're talking about the classic Universal monsters, right? Now,
Yeah, that sort of thing.
So we're talking about Frankenstein, Dracula, those kind of guys. And so, but are you into the 80s characters like Freddy and Jason and
No.
Michael and all those guys? Nah, not really into
No.
it.
So I'm not. I like my Halloween free of gore.
Right. You
Which
prefer
I know
the
is probably not common at all, but I like just classic, a good old vampire and a Frankenstein's monster and a werewolf.
Right. You prefer your action to take place off screen with your monsters, right? Just
We're in
gonna
the
kind
mind.
of right, exactly. Just gonna kind of assume what that vampire just did. I think he just did something naughty. I'm not sure, but we'll see. But yeah, I'm with you in that too. But I also have a great fondness for those 80s character monsters, because that's what they were. They were all characters, and they were just. But to me, they kind of represent maybe a little more Grimm's fairy tales reality, because Grimm fairy tales and that kind of stuff. That stuff was, it could be a little bit. It could be descriptive. We watered them down a pretty good bit, but I think the 80s brought them back.
Yeah, I downloaded this collection of Grimm fairy tales, just some open,
Right.
whatever the word is. You know that word?
Open source, available for free.
Thank
you can.
Yeah, that
yes,
thing.
Public domain, I think is the
Public
word.
domain, yes.
There we go.
So I could read these old fairy tales to my kids at night.
Right.
And
Now go to sleep.
yeah, I'm going through some of these for the first time. I'm like, stuff happens in this one, and then I'm just editing it as I go.
I remember these not being so.
Yeah, there's one where this witch makes a trunk close on a boy's head, and his head comes right off.
Yeah, it was. They were. There's some interesting times.
Well, even some of the Mother Goose rhymes are pretty damn dark.
Yeah. Well, Mother Goose, those kind of things we're dealing with. Okay, let's face it, we had a pretty easy growing up. All of us on the show here, anyway. We lived in pretty modern times. We didn't have to worry about the plague or something. But those old stories were kind of like kids had to deal with that. It's like, half your classmates died. Oh, bummer. Here's a story. Sit down.
Yeah, it's bad when those fairy tales seem cheery compared to real life.
Right.
Yes.
Oh, that's such a pleasant story.
It is, and that's one of the reasons why I think we like horror, is because it gives us a safe place to be scared. So, I mean, if you go and say, oh, there really isn't just an evil person, but we can overcome it because it's a person, as opposed to going, you may get some invisible disease and start showing, skin lesions and be dead tomorrow.
Nice.
Good luck. Good luck.
Sunshine and happy, as always, Brian.
Right.
Sunshine and happy. Well, in addition to fairy tales, something that I don't know if we've mentioned yet today is that Mortimer B. Radley is a detective. So I'm wondering, what are what kind of detective stories inspired you to go this route? Do you have any favorites?
I've been on a serious Poirot kick lately.
Oh,
really? Did you ever watch that show?
No, I have not, but I've heard of it.
You gonna watch the movie?
Oh yeah, I just saw that today. What a coincidence. I don't know. Maybe. I'm not a huge movie guy. Family, kids.
Family, drawing, life.
I rarely go out and see a movie.
Right.
But that one does, that one tempts me. But Poirot, Sherlock Holmes, I like my old-fashioned mysteries.
Yes, Sherlock Holmes is so great. It's such a look into the analytical mind. I love it so much. I've loved just about every incarnation of it. I love the books, too. Geez, there was something else that was freaking scary as crap. Hounds of Baskerville. Don't read that mess.
There's a modern detective story that the name of it is unfortunately is escaping me, but it's a supernatural detective.
Oh, is it Scooby-Doo?
No.
Wait, no, I think I know what you're talking about. Dirk Gently?
Yes. No, Dirk Gently is the Douglas Adams one. This is he's the holistic detective, and that's different because he's a detective by pure happenstance, which is both funny and infuriating when you're watching the show. No, it's it's a series. It's a whole series of books. It's like a film noir type detective series, but it's all the twist is that it's all wizards and magic and supernatural stuff. I'm gonna Google it while you guys continue.
Someone is yelling at the screen right now.
I know Garrett Weinzierl, if he ever listens, is screaming at me now because I know he's the one that recommended it to me.
You fool! You've forgotten everything. Cam, guess what time it is? You took too long.
Okay.
It's the end of the show. It's time for us to ask you, the guest, the last question ever. Matt?
The last question ever. So, Cam, are there any artists that we need to know about and need to be following?
Yeah, so Tracy Butler. Tracy
All right.
Butler is an incredible artist. She does a webcomic called
Yes, I love it.
Lackadaisy Cats.
Yes, lackadaisy.
You know,
Man,
Prohibition and Cats.
good Lord, the artwork on this.
Yeah,
And you
incredible.
say it's a comic?
Yeah, it's a webcomic. She actually has a Patreon campaign as well.
Lackadaisy is her patron. So if you go to patreon.com/lackadaisy, you can see that. But I would suggest you go to Cam's site first. But hey, whatever. We support other people too.
Yeah, her stuff is just incredible. Wonderful story, really rich, in-depth characters. That's what I look for in a story. So.
Anytime you got a cat with a top hat, sign me up. And it's not like you'd think. It's not like that, Dr. Seuss thing. No, this is like a serious, old school. What is that? Like a kind of how would you describe that coloring? Like a sepia tone kind of.
Yeah.
I dig it.
Yeah, it has a real timeless feel to it. What's weird about this, like I've seen her work all over the place. I follow her on DeviantArt and I have for years, and her work is amazing. But her name strikes me as really familiar, and I'm wondering, there was an anthropomorphic artist that I followed way back in like the late 90s, early 2000s on some other fantasy site before DeviantArt was even a thing. And I want to say it was Tracy Butler, but she had this cool fantasy world built up, and there was characters that were rabbits and rams and bears and deers and all that kind of stuff. And I'm wondering if I do some digging, if I can find some of her older work. I'm wondering if it's the same artist, because it has the same sort of feel in terms of like I wonder if Tracy's worked in or is working in animation at any point, because she has that animator's kind of like design sense.
Right.
Yeah, I wonder.
Character design sense. I can totally see that.
From what I understand right now, all she does is work on that webcomic.
Yeah.
So says her Patreon. Yeah, she's 100% full time working on Lackadaisy. And before I forget, Dresden Files. The Dresden Files is the name of the
Dresden Files,
is the book series. Yeah. Wizard and Private Eye is the hook.
But that hasn't been run for a while though. But you probably said that. That's like early 2000s.
Yes, it has been around for a while, early 2000s. But I think the audiobooks are newish.
Right.
I think they started recirculating in 2007, 2009, which is not recent, but more recent than the original publication date in 2000.
Right.
So and it's the audiobooks that were being recommended to me.
Nice. I'm all up on audiobooks.
I am too. I love it. Do you have an Audible account, or do you just buy them as you go?
I just find stuff on YouTube.
Hey, that works too.
Shh, don't tell anybody.
I know, quiet. No one knows about this secret thing called YouTube. I agree, Cam. I do the same thing. Like I usually take a little taste. Usually I find that a lot of the things that are on YouTube, especially the audiobooks, seem to be things that were recorded prior to our access to digital, but have been converted to digital. So you'll have like records that were recorded originally, like on vinyl or tapes or cassettes, and like I listened to part of Stephen King's It on YouTube, and it was definitely an older reading, and while it was entertaining, I definitely enjoy the experience that modern readers do for Audible is quite entertaining. But those things are expensive, man. Like $30 for an audiobook?
Yeah, what?
Are you kidding me? All right. How many free trials can you get of Audible anyway?
Yeah.
Depends on how many podcasts are still being promoted by Audible.
Right? True story. True story. Hey, you know what I did? I had a great show and I had a lot of fun, and I can't wait to have Cam back for part 3 after he gets this Kickstarter up and rolling. Cam, where can people, one more time, where can people visit you? Where would you like them to see you on the internet?
Well, go check out my Patreon, patreon.com/Cam Kendell, or go to camkendall.com and be linked to everything I do.
Excellent. Cam, tell everybody we said hi in Utah.
Oh, I will.
Hi, Utah. Also with us was Joel Duggan of Forge Publishing. Joel?
That is me, and the only place that I want you to go is forgepublishing.com/inktank. That will take you to the Kickstarter page for Rob Momart's new book. Check it out.
That's all he wants, people.
The one thing. Just the one thing.
It's the one thing, Matthew.
Well, we brought up YouTube, and that's exactly where I'd like people to look for my stuff. Just do a search for my name, Matthew Ducharme, or Matt the Wad.
Excellent. You can follow me at the Brian Dunaway website, briandunaway.com. That's what I do. That's who I am. Also, everything we do with Comics Coast to Coast is on Twitter. Follow us at Comics C2C if you enjoy the show and you would like to hear a higher quality show and maybe some more video. By the way, I'm posting these on YouTube. Go to my website or just go to YouTube, look up Brian Dunaway. I've got a playlist for Comics Coast to Coast. It's mostly me just presenting slideshows of the stuff we're talking about while we're doing the show. Eventually, we would like to be doing more video with our faces, but of course, that takes time and money. So back to the thing I was saying. If you want to support us, head on to patreon.com/comicsc2c and show us a little bit of your loving. We appreciate you. That's it. We'll see you guys next week.
This show is part of the Frog Pants Network. Get more at frogpants.com.
Was it the strawberry shortcake?
Strawberry
flavors?
shortcake.
Yeah.
My sister had those.
Oh, those were so good. Can I eat your doll? Thanks. So good.
Man.
Did that, and what else? Somebody was asking the other day. There was like they were being serious. Did you ever see Garbage Pail Kids? You know, growing up, and I was like, yeah, I saw the movie.
Yep.
And he's all like, "Hey, where did they come up with that kind of stuff?" And I said, it was a weird time. People were sick of all the goody-goody. We had Care Bears and Cabbage Patch dolls that weren't actually born from vaginas. They came out of cabbages. And I said, it was a counterculture. They said, what would be great? How about dumpster babies? That sounds great. Let's do that. And so, and I'm like, oh, so you've seen Garbage Pail Kids? I said, yeah, I've seen it. I own the movie. I own the DVD, VHS, whatever you want to say.
Did you guys do that on Film Sack? You must have.
Probably did. It was probably Randy, if I had to guess.
Yeah. That was a gross movie. I remember I mean, at the time when I watched it, I was younger. I thought it was hilarious, me and my buddy Scott, but my parents just hated it.
Not amused. Cam,
Yep.
are you ready to do a show?
Of course.
Dude, I can't believe you're back.